Have you ever been in that stomach-dropping moment? You're giving a presentation, maybe you're in a really crucial meeting, and boom, suddenly a sharp, unexpected question just hits you.
Oh, yeah.
Your mind just goes blank. You start kind of fumbling for words. Maybe a cold sweat breaks out.
Yeah.
That feeling of being totally caught off guard, we've all been there.
Yeah.
Right?
It's such a classic high-pressure scenario, isn't it? And, well, that's exactly why handling those tough questions isn't just like a nice-to-have skill in the business world. It's absolutely foundational.
Right.
It's not simply about having the perfect answer right away. It's really about maintaining your credibility, showing professionalism, and proving you can actually think on your feet, especially, when you're communicating in English. This deep dive, it's kind of a shortcut to appearing, really well-informed, even when maybe you don't have every single tiny detail right there at your fingertips.
Absolutely. So for today's deep dive, we've really unpacked a fantastic guide. It's specifically designed for mastering this exact thing, handling tough questions.
Yeah, great stuff in there.
And our mission really is to arm you with 6 essential expressions that can completely transform how you respond to those difficult inquiries. Think of them as your strategic toolkit.
Exactly, tools.
Yeah, tools for staying composed, delivering a thoughtful reply, even when you're maybe a bit unsure. These aren't just, phrases to memorize. They're your path to appearing smart, capable, and totally in control no matter what gets thrown your way. All right, let's dig in. So these aren't just phrases you parrot back, right? They're genuinely strategic tools. They're designed to help you navigate these tricky conversations with confidence.
That's absolutely the key. Each one serves a very specific purpose. It might be buying you time, or maybe building a bit of rapport, or just clarifying the meaning so you don't go off track. It's about managing the whole interaction, not just the info.
Okay, makes sense. So let's kick things off with the very first one. That's a great question. Let me address that by.
This one's brilliant. It's like a double win, First, it positively acknowledges the question. That immediately builds a little goodwill with the person asking.
Right, flatters them a bit.
Exactly. And crucially, it buys you those vital few seconds to organize your thoughts. And it signals really clearly that you're about to give a structured, thoughtful response.
Okay.
The memory tip I like for this one: imagine you're handing the questioner a little trophy. You're saying, hey, good question, while you're actually getting ready to structure your answer. It gives you control.
That's actually quite powerful, isn't it? It's almost like you're saying, hey, I appreciate your thinking deeply here, and guess what? I'm ready to meet that depth.
Yeah.
So an example might be, that's a great question. Let me address that by first explaining our research methodology, which I think will help clarify why we reach these conclusions.
Exactly. See how it just sets a completely different, more controlled tone right from the start?
Yeah, I really do. Okay, so moving on. For when you're facing those maybe more critical questions or someone that raises a real concern, what about, I understand your concern about X. Here's how we're approaching it.
Oh, this one is pure gold for diffusing tension. You're directly acknowledging their worry, right? Showing empathy. And then you immediately pivot. You shift to a constructive, action-oriented response. The memory tip here is visualizing safely handling a balloon of worry. You don't want to pop it, right?
Yeah.
You're not ignoring their concern. You're taking it seriously. You're validating it and then addressing it head on. And that is incredibly reassuring for the person asking.
It's a perfect image. It really is about validation before you explain. So if someone's worried about a deadline slipping, you could say, I understand you're concerned about the project timeline. Here's how we're approaching it. We've identified the critical path activities and actually added some buffer time to those high-risk phases just to ensure we can still meet the final deadline.
Exactly. You're showing you've thought about it, maybe even anticipated their concern, and you're ready with a plan. It builds trust.
Definitely. Now, what about those moments, and let's be honest, they happen to everyone, when you simply don't have all the facts right there?
Yeah.
That's where, I don't have all the details on that right now, but I can. Comes in handy, I guess.
Absolutely. This phrase is key because it lets you be honest about a knowledge gap without completely losing credibility. Now, this might feel different depending on your cultural background, but in many English-speaking business contexts, this is valued.
Okay.
The absolute crucial part, though, is that immediate, but I can, follow-up. You admit a temporary limitation, but you instantly show proactivity. You show commitment to getting them a complete answer.
Right.
The visual. Imagine showing someone an incomplete puzzle, but promising the finished version later. You're building trust by being reliable.
I love that. It really turns a potential moment of weakness into a strength. You're highlighting your reliability. So let's say an executive asks for, I don't know, specific line-by-line cost variances right there in the meeting. I can say, I don't have all the details on that right now, but I can definitely research the specific numbers and email you a comprehensive breakdown by, say, tomorrow morning.
Perfect. It sounds confident, proactive, not evasive at all. It's about offering that solution.
Okay, our fourth essential expression is, let me put this in context. When would you use this one?
This is your go-to when a question really needs a bit more background to make sense, or maybe the situation is complex. It lets you provide that crucial broader picture before you give the direct answer. And that truly enhances how well your audience gets your response. The memory tip. Imagine placing a small picture, like the detail they asked about, within a much bigger picture frame.
Nice.
You're helping them see how that one piece fits into the larger strategy or situation. Makes your answer much clearer, much more understandable.
That's incredibly helpful, because sometimes a question seems simple, but the real answer needs, well, some groundwork laid first. For instance, you could say, okay, let me put this in context. Our industry has seen like 3 major regulatory changes just in the past year. And that's really shifted how all companies approach compliance. So within this new framework, our strategy focuses on, see, it makes your actual strategy points so much stronger.
Precisely. More robust is a good word for it.
Okay, number 5. This one tackles complexity head on. That's a complex issue with several aspects to consider.
Yeah, some questions just don't have simple, easy answers, do they? And trying to force one can actually backfire.
Right.
So this expression acknowledges that complexity right up front. It signals you're not going to oversimplify. Instead, you're going to break it down systematically. The visual here. Think about explaining a multi-layered cake, layer by layer.
Okay, I like that.
You're showing you respect the complexity, and you're going to approach it in a digestible way, helping the listener understand all the different nuances involved.
I can totally see how this prevents oversimplification, especially in, tricky business situations. So here's how you might use it. That's a complex issue with several aspects to consider. I mean, on one hand, increasing automation definitely improves efficiency, but, on the other hand, we really need to consider the impact on our workforce and also the customer experience. Let me break down the key factors we're weighing. It buys you time and manages expectations.
Exactly. It shows you've actually thought deeply about the different sides of the problem. Very professional.
Okay, and finally, our 6th phrase. This one feels critical for those moments of ambiguity. If I understand your question correctly, you're asking about.
Oh, this is paramount. Absolutely vital for those ambiguous questions, or maybe really complex ones where you're just not 100% sure what the questioner is really getting at. By rephrasing the question back to them, you make sure you've understood it accurately before you launch into an answer. This allows you to give a precise, relevant response. Think of it like focusing a blurry photograph. You bring it into sharp clarity first.
That's a great analogy.
It prevents miscommunication, ensures your answer actually hits the mark, which is, let's face it, far better than confidently answering the wrong question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because answering the wrong question, even if you sound confident doing it, is still, wrong. The example you gave is clear. Okay, if I understand your question correctly, you're asking about how our new policy will affect existing clients rather than new acquisitions. Is that right? Okay, well, the impact on existing clients will actually be minimal because confirm, then deliver with precision.
Right. Each of these phrases, really, it gives you a crucial moment. It could be just a breath or a moment to think or a way to frame your response. And that not only helps you formulate a better answer, but it also projects this image of thoughtful competence.
Which is invaluable, isn't it? Especially when you're aiming to quickly gain knowledge, understand things thoroughly, and, frankly, appear well-informed and capable. Okay, that was a fantastic breakdown of the phrases themselves. Now, let's really see them in action. Let's imagine a post-presentation Q&A. The topic is a new marketing strategy. This next part will show you how these expressions get used naturally in a real back-and-forth dialogue.
Yeah, let's do it. We'll walk through each exchange, and I'll point out why a specific phrase was chosen, based on the type of question. You'll really see how they strategically change the dynamic of the conversation.
Okay, first up. Someone from the audience, maybe a bit skeptical, challenges with, your projections show a 30% increase in customer acquisition. But honestly, given the current market conditions and all the increased competition, isn't that, overly optimistic?
Okay, tough question. And the response uses that first great phrase. That's a great question. Let me address that by explaining the assumptions behind our projections. We've actually based the 30% figure not just on market trends, but also on the early results from our pilot program. We ran it in 3 test markets, and in those, we've already seen a 25% increase even with similar competitive conditions.
You know, what I love about that response is it doesn't just acknowledge the question was good. It immediately sets up this structured defense, but without sounding defensive at all.
Right.
It's kind of like saying, okay, I appreciate your skepticism, and guess what? I've got the data to back this up. It just shifts the energy right away, doesn't it? From challenge to more like shared understanding.
Precisely. It signals confidence in your preparation, even when you're being directly challenged. Very effective.
Okay, next. Audience member number 2 follows up, maybe building on that skepticism. But hang on, weren't those test markets kind of cherry-picked? Chosen for favorable conditions?
That's it. Okay, so this is a clear concern being voiced. So the "I understand your concern" phrase is absolutely perfect here. The response is, "I understand your concern about the representativeness of our test markets. Here's how we're approaching it. We actually deliberately selected markets with varying competitive landscapes. Some were highly saturated, others were more emerging. We did that specifically to ensure our strategy is robust across different conditions. And the data from all 3 markets showed positive results, although, yes, with different magnitudes."
See, that's so effective because you're validating their perspective before you even start explaining. You're not just brushing off their worry. You're saying, yeah, I hear you, and we actually thought about that exact point. It really helps build trust, I think.
It does. It shows you're not afraid of the critique.
Okay, then audience member 3 brings up the money. What about the budget implications here? This new strategy, it seems like it would require, well, significant additional investment, wouldn't it?
Right. The budget question always comes up. To set the stage for a financial answer, let me put this in context, is ideal. So the response, okay, let me put this in context. While yes, the upfront investment is indeed higher than our previous campaigns, we're actually projecting a 40% lower customer acquisition cost over the full 12-month period.
Ah, okay.
And this is because the digital-first approach allows for much more precise targeting, plus real-time optimization of any underperforming channels.
That's really smart. Instead of just giving a raw number, you're framing it in terms of longer-term value and efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just answering the cost question. You're kind of educating them on the why behind the numbers.
Right.
It moves the whole conversation from just cost to investment return.
Exactly. A strategic reframing.
Okay. Audience 4 then drills down, asking for specifics. You mentioned different channels. Can you actually share the specific ROI figures for each channel you talked about?
Okay, this is a classic don't have that exact detail right now moment. Super common. The response uses that phrase perfectly. I don't have all the details on the channel-specific ROI right here, right now, but I can certainly provide that breakdown. We do have comprehensive analytics for each channel, and I'll make sure to send the detailed ROI comparison to all attendees by, let's say, the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a tough one to get put on the spot with, but that response is just perfect.
Yeah.
You're honest, right? But more importantly, you're proactive. You're not just shrugging and saying, I don't know. You're saying, I don't know yet, but I am absolutely going to get you the exact information you need. That's incredibly reassuring for the listener.
Totally. It maintains credibility while managing the immediate lack of data.
Okay, here's a really tough one. Audience member 5 asks,
Yeah.
how does this strategy even account for all the recent privacy changes that are limiting targeting capabilities? That seems like a major hurdle.
Right, a complex, evolving issue. So for multifaceted problems like privacy regulations, the phrase, "that's a complex issue with several aspects to consider," is exactly what you need.
Okay.
The response goes, "That's a really complex issue with several aspects to consider. You're right, the privacy landscape is indeed evolving rapidly." Our strategy actually addresses this in 3 main ways. First, by focusing more on contextual targeting rather than purely behavioral targeting. Second, by investing more in our own first-party data collection, through value exchanges with customers. And third, by deliberately diversifying our channel mix to reduce dependency on any single platform that might be most affected by these changes.
That's brilliant. It completely avoids oversimplification. It shows you've actually thought through multiple angles. It immediately communicates, hey, I get how nuanced this problem is, and we're prepared with a multi-pronged solution. That's far more impactful than a simple yes or no answer could ever be.
Exactly. It demonstrates strategic thinking.
All right, audience 6 questions of potential downside. You mentioned shifting resources away from traditional channels towards digital, but doesn't that risk alienating, our older customer segments? who might prefer the old ways.
Okay, potential misunderstanding or a need for clarification here. So if I understand your question correctly, phrase is used perfectly. Okay, if I understand your question correctly, you're asking specifically about potential negative impacts on our older demographic. Is that right? Okay, well, this is definitely something we've carefully considered.
To start.
So, while we're increasing digital investment, we're absolutely not eliminating traditional channels. Instead, we're actually optimizing them to better reach the specific segments that still prefer those touch points. And interestingly, our research shows that digital adoption among older segments has actually increased by about 22% since the pandemic began, so that gap is narrowing quite a bit.
This is such a fantastic way to handle potential misinterpretations, or just to make absolutely sure you're answering the exact question they intended. You confirm, and then you tackle the concern directly, even bringing in data to support your approach. It's concise, respectful, and incredibly clear.
Yeah, avoids going down the wrong path entirely.
Okay, and finally, Audience 7 comes in with a kind of confidence check. Thanks for clarifying all that. Just one final question. How confident are you, really, that your team can actually execute all these different initiatives simultaneously? It sounds like a lot.
The execution question. Back to the beginning, maybe, with, that's a great question, acknowledging the strategic nature of the inquiry. That's a great question. Implementation capacity was actually one of our primary considerations when we developed this strategy. We've mapped out a very clear phased approach that prioritizes the high-impact, low-complexity initiatives first. That helps build momentum while we build capabilities for the more complex elements later on.
Okay, phased approach.
We've also identified the specific resource needs for each phase, and we've already secured commitments from leadership for additional support where it's needed.
What's really powerful there is that you're not just saying, oh yeah, we can do it. You're actually laying out the strategy for how it will get done.
Mm-hmm.
You're showing this thoughtful, structured approach to execution that builds way more confidence than just simple reassurance would. It reveals a deeper plan. You know, it's fascinating how these phrases are so powerful just on their own, but truly mastering communication like this, it goes beyond just the words, doesn't it?
Yep.
Understanding the underlying cultural dynamics can make them even more effective.
Absolutely. If we kind of zoom out and connect this to the bigger picture, there are definitely notable differences in how questions are typically handled across different cultures.
Right.
So, for example, in some cultures, maybe thinking about certain aspects of, say, Korean question response culture, there can sometimes be a tendency to view admitting ignorance, saying, I don't know, as a kind of weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And there might also be a bit more discomfort with very direct challenges, which could lead to a preference for more indirect avoidance tactics, like maybe saying, I'll review that, rather than giving a direct answer or admitting you don't have the info right then.
And that's a pretty stark contrast, isn't it, to what's often expected in, say, a typical U.S. business context or many English-speaking environments.
It really can be.
Here, saying something like, I don't have that specific number right now, but I'll find out and get back to you, is often seen as a sign of honesty, of reliability.
Exactly.
And those challenging questions, they're often viewed more constructively, right? Like an opportunity to elaborate or clarify, not necessarily as a personal attack. The ability to respond well, to think on your feet, it's actually seen as a key indicator of professionalism, even leadership potential.
Yeah, that emphasis on thinking on your feet in many English-speaking business cultures is really, really important. It's about being adaptable, responding effectively, even when things come out of the blue. This skill is highly valued, especially in Q&A sessions, where that kind of spontaneity and quick analysis is often expected.
Okay, so to give you even more tools for those moments, our source actually introduces something called the answer principle. It's like a framework for structuring your responses, for really achieving mastery.
That's right. It's a handy mnemonic. Answer guides you through a really comprehensive approach. So first, A is for acknowledge the question. That's where our phrase, that's a great question, really shines. Then N is note any key concerns that might be hidden within the question. S means structure your response clearly. Think about your main points.
Okay.
W is way different perspective, showing you've considered various angles. E is for an evidence-based explanation, back up your points with facts or data if you can. Then the first R is relate your answer to the broader context use that, let me put this in context idea. And the final R is recap your main points just to ensure clarity at the end. It really gives you a complete roadmap for a thorough answer.
That's really comprehensive. And for just that immediate composure, right in the heat of the moment, there's also the practical 3B principle. This one's so simple. but incredibly effective for just staying calm under pressure.
It truly is. Dead simple, really effective. First B is breathe. Literally, just take a conscious breath, maintain your composure, calm your nerves.
Okay.
Second B is brain. Allow your brain that crucial second or two to actually think, to process the question before you just jump in and speak.
Yeah, resist the urge to just talk immediately.
Exactly. And the third B is bridge. Connect the question to your answer naturally, smoothly. Use one of our phrases, perhaps. Just those 3 steps, breathe, brain, bridge, they can make all the difference in how you come across.
It's amazing, isn't it, how just pausing for a tiny moment can completely shift the quality and perception of your response. Okay, let's try applying these phrases now in a completely brand new scenario. Imagine this. You're in a meeting, you're reporting on your team's project, an executive asks a pretty sharp question about why costs are higher than expected, and you don't have all the detailed numbers right there with you.
Okay, yeah, classic situation. This is a perfect chance to strategically use those expressions we've been talking about.
So how would you even start that off? What's the first thing you'd say?
Well, you'd probably want to start by acknowledging the concern directly, using that first phrase. Something like, that's a great question. Let me address that by first acknowledging that, yes, we have seen about a 15% increase in costs compared to our initial projections.
Okay, own it up front.
Right. This increase seems to stem primarily from 2 main factors. Some unexpected supply chain disruptions we faced, and also the additional quality assurance steps we decided to implement after the mid-project review.
Okay, good context. And then to really handle their underlying worry about the budget itself, what comes next?
Then you'd lean into empathy, using the second phrase. Maybe. I certainly understand your concern about the budget implications. Cost management is absolutely a top priority for our team, and I want to assure you we've already taken several steps to mitigate any further increases. You're showing you're proactive, and you share their concern.
Got it. So how do you put that 15% increase into perspective for them so they don't just fixate on that number and panic?
That's exactly when, let me put this in context, becomes invaluable. You could say, okay, let me put this in context for you. While costs have increased in certain specific areas, we've also managed to identify some savings in other parts of the project. So the net effect, when you look at the total project budget, is actually closer to an 8% increase overall. And importantly, that's still within the contingency buffer we established right at the outset.
Ah, okay, that framing makes a huge difference. Now, what if the executive follows up with a question about, say, trade-offs? Like, did we sacrifice quality to try and control costs, or vice versa?
Yeah, that's definitely getting into complex territory, so you'd use that phrase. That's a complex issue with several aspects to consider. You know, on one hand, yes, we could potentially reduce costs further by scaling back some of those enhanced quality measures we added, but frankly, this might impact the final deliverable quality.
Right.
On the other hand, maintaining these measures ensures we meet the really high standards expected for this particular flagship project. Yeah. It just lays out the dilemma transparently, showing the factors you're weighing.
And this is probably where that "I don't have all the details" phrase becomes a real lifesaver, isn't it? When they ask for those super specific numbers you mentioned earlier.
Absolutely. For those specific numbers you just don't have memorized, you'd go straight to, you know, I don't have all the details on the line-by-line cost variances right here in front of me, but I can absolutely prepare a comprehensive breakdown for our next status meeting. In the meantime, what I can share is that the largest single variance is in component sourcing, which accounts for roughly 60% of that total increase we discussed. You deliver what you can immediately and confidently promise the rest.
Perfect. And finally, let's say they're pushing a bit, asking about preventability. You know, could this have been avoided? How do you clarify that, address it, without sounding like you're just making excuses?
That's where clarifying the question first is really key. Use phrase number 6. Okay, if I understand your question correctly, you're asking about whether these cost increases could have been anticipated and maybe prevented. Is that about right?
Yeah.
Well, some factors, like those global supply chain issues we ran into, were genuinely beyond our direct control. However, looking back, we've definitely learned some valuable lessons about building perhaps more robust contingency planning into future projects, especially around components where we know there are limited suppliers. You answer exactly what they asked, you're honest about limitations, and you crucially show proactive learning.
That was an incredible walkthrough.
Yeah.
Really shows how flexible these phrases are. Okay, so to quickly recap our deep dive today into handling those tough questions, just remember these 6 powerful expressions. Think of them as your strategic toolkit.
Absolutely. First up, that's a great question. Let me address that by that's your go-to for acknowledging the question and, importantly, buying yourself that crucial thinking time.
Right. Then, for tackling those specific concerns head on, you've got, I understand you're concerned about X, here's how we're approaching it. That's for acknowledging their worries and immediately pivoting to a constructive response.
And for those moments when you're just a bit stuck on the specifics, I don't have all the details on that right now, but I can. That allows you to be honest about your limits while offering a proactive, reliable solution. Builds trust.
Then, to give that essential background information, let me put this in context. Great for painting the bigger picture before diving into the details, making your answer much clearer.
When things inevitably get complicated, that's a complex issue with several aspects to consider. That helps you break down those multifaceted questions into understandable parts, showing you grasp the nuance.
And finally, just to make sure you're absolutely on the same page before you answer, if I understand your question correctly, you're asking about. Perfect for clarifying any ambiguous or complex questions, ensuring your answer is precise and relevant.
You know, these phrases, they really are game changers for almost any professional setting. So thinking about all this, what really stands out to you from today's deep dive? Do you maybe have your own go-to expressions for handling tough questions that you'd be willing to share? Reflect on that.
Yeah, definitely food for thought. And ultimately, just remember that quote from our source material. The quality of your answers reflects the quality of your thinking. Let that sink in, internalize that idea, and use these tools we discussed today to confidently show the quality of your thinking.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. We hope you'll join us next time for Confident Uncertainty. Expressing uncertainty confidently. We'll explore how you can maintain professionalism and credibility even when you genuinely don't have all the answers right away. Should be interesting.